Why, good day to all a good day. I hope all of you had an absolute spectacular day. Thank you all for existing. Today on Words with Wyatt, this wonderful, beautiful show produced by none other but him himself. Wyatt, by the way. Today I want to introduce an idea. And an idea, an opinion, all speculation, I reckon. What would it be like to die and never wake up? Or to fall asleep and never wake up? Or the reverse, what would it be like to wake up after never being asleep? As in, when I was in the womb, or maybe before that, what was I thinking? The center of myself, what was I doing? And the funny thing about the word I, it's, when I say, what was I doing, I'm talking about all of us, because we are all this center of experience, I, from our own perspectives. But I want to focus on the interval, the darkness. Say, I guess most comparable to falling asleep and never waking back up is the interval between when we fall asleep and when we wake up, being buried in blackness, a cottage of darkness. Being encased in obsidian so black that it glows, being encased in white so bright that it's black. And in this interval where always it just goes by like that. But when you're in a dream, it can feel like days, hours, weeks. But this blackness, that's really what I want to explore today. So to me, it kind of resembles the fact how modern linear linguistics, as well as common thought, gives us a one-at-a-time translation of a universe in which everything is happening all together at once. And in these terms, to perfectly describe a particle of dust, it would take everlasting time, because you would have to account for every point in its volume. And this is the blackness that I'm talking about. Imagine, just close your eyes and you can imagine anything. But let's say you were in a dream and you were given this task for some reason, some unknown, maybe something urged you to do it, or hell, you got to that situation, you don't even know how. But let's say you were casted to a dream and you dreamt 75 years and it started with complete darkness. Well, in this dream, you were encapsulated for 75 years. And so it would start out as a canvas, almost, with no limits, but no bounds, nothing even of the opposite. What is the opposite of a boundary? What is the opposite of, what is the opposite of that? I'm not sure. But, so we would start this, and once we started looking at the black and realizing, oh my God, it's the space, it's everywhere. But before you know it, you start to hear just ringing. I'm not talking the ringing of like a telephone. I'm talking a high-pitched squeal, so loud that it almost burst your eardrums, but it go, you know, when you're focused on something so hard, your ears just start to do their own thing. So you would start off with that, and then before you know it, the light would seem to bounce almost. Like when you're looking at a light and it just, the more you focus and look deeper and deeper into it, you realize that it's not a constant thing of energy, it's an interval. It goes on, off, on, off, on, off, on, off, but so quick we don't even realize it. And before we know it, in this blanket of darkness, we would realize that it's covered in light by those same means. And then before you know it, you'd have all these feelings, all these tingles on you. And it would go from more of a interval of it would go from that to all these little curly cues, and they're going off. And before you know it, you would imagine a third dimension. It's all coming right at you. It seems as if you're being completely and even more buried in blackness. And before you know it, you'd start to imagine all these pretty things. You'd imagine yourself in this beautiful world, not necessarily this one, but you'd imagine a world, another canvas, and you would start to paint it. Your mind would. And before you know it, we all get bored with a blank white page. We'd start to draw all these beautiful little hills, all these mountains, all these deep trenches, rivers, lakes, oceans. And before you know, you have all this stuff, but you want something more. You want something to drive it. Therefore, you add animals, living things. And all this just is never enough. It's never going to be enough in the mind of the common man. But eventually, we'd start to imagine even people. We might not think of them as people at the time of the dream, but these humanoids. And, at first you'd have one, and you'd start to think to yourself, man, this motherfucker's pretty boring. And then before you know it, you have a lot of them. But they're not doing different things, so now you start to imagine them all doing different things, all, specialization in society. They would start to form little towns, all this. They would start to civilize themselves. And then, now, you have all these people running around. What are you doing? You're just observing it. So you place yourself as one of these people, one of these humanoids, in this crazy, almost god-awful, but god-amazing landscape canvas. And this all stemmed from this blackness. And then, before you know it, you would want to have all these crazy adventures. You'd have curiosity, pleasures. You'd want to engorge yourself in food, have all these fantastic orgies. You would want to experience sadness. You would want to experience death, because if you just had happiness all the time, you wouldn't know it's happiness. You have to have that interval, like on a saw blade. Here, let me grab one. Okay, on this saw blade, we have all these little things. And the thing about a saw blade, we have these crests and we have these troughs. But if this saw blade was just the crests, it wouldn't cut. If in the same way, if this saw blade had just troughs, it wouldn't cut. It would just be flat, no interval. But in order to cut, you have to have the interval. You have to have these gaps. And if it wasn't for that's what I mean when I say if it wasn't for the dark, you wouldn't see the stars. So you would want to have sadness, happiness, heartbreak. You would want to have all this negative, positive. You would want to have it all. And before you know it, you have a whole life. You have all these worldly attachments. You have a girlfriend. You have a house. You have a job. You have what seems like it all, but it never seems enough. And before it all goes away, you realize that this imagination world, this person that you have envisioned in your mind, that's us. That is us. We would eventually imagine ourselves in the adventure of our own shoes from where we were standing. You would be watching this video and I would be filming it. And you gotta think, like, man, what the fuck is the point of all this? I just watched 9 minutes of this man just rambling just to learn that I'm staring at a video. But that's the thing, because there could be nothing at all. There could just be this blackness, absolutely no energy, but there's not. It would have been so much easier for there to be nothing at all. And yet, here we are. And that's all there is. That's the whole point. As to say, I look at the color of your hair and the shape of your eyebrows, and I understand that that's the whole point. It's so plain, it's so simple, and yet here is everyone running around as if there's something more to achieve than all that. And the funny part about it is that they don't even realize what it is, but they're devilishly intent upon it. So I say to the person in this state of mind, in which I call mystical, it's not something you criticize in an unkindly way. You don't say, you idiot, you fool. You say it's such a pity that they can't see it. Because while everyone is running around in this wildly ignorant pursuit, there's a sensei dimension in which their pursuit is absolutely fucking magnificent. Absolutely magnificent, because we are here. We are in this experience, living this wild adventure. And to think this could all be a dream. But we will never know. Until, well, hopefully, I'd like to think that I'll die eventually. And that's going to be a beautiful process. I just hope I can picture it like that at the time. Most people can't, but hey. How many people with, like a couple bullet holes in them, or say their leg just cut off, they're like, boy, I'm really living right now. Not many people, but all those crazy things that happens to us, it makes us who we are. It builds character. And I don't even know what I'm trying to get. I don't even know what the point of this is. But we're here. Why? What else is there to achieve but this great adventure? I mean, we're living it, and some people think, oh, poor old me. Oh, I'm such a victim of these shitty circumstances. But don't be a victim. We have the complete power to do absolutely whatever we want. And if you don't believe that, then you already fucking lost. Saying that you can't just solidifies that you never will. It is. Man, we're here. This is it. And if you don't believe, or say you do believe that you can do whatever you want, but you don't know where to start. Instead of thinking, boy, how the fuck is this gonna work? Instead envision, how am I gonna make this work? And yes, what we want comes with consequences. And if you can't endure the consequences, then maybe it wasn't what you want. But say if you were in that black room and you tried to envision what you want, you would go through the exact same cycle that I just explained to you, and you would once again realize, like, I'm here. And so many people get lost in this limbo thinking, boy, I'm here. What is the point? It's like they're drunk. It's like they're an ego encapsulated in fucking flesh. They feel their skin separates from the world, but I feel that their skin joins them to the world. We are it. We are it. If you were looking for a sign to do whatever you want that makes you happy, consider this it. A fucking man. Actually, for an outro, I even light this up. This is tobacco, by the way. It's a crazy strain. Guy at the tobacco store said it was called Gorilla Glue. I ain't never heard tobacco called that, but ooh, good night before I cry.